We are continuing on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim, Hilchot Shabbat, the halachot of Kiddush, Siman Resh Ayin Bet Seif Dalit is where we are holding, and Daf Nun, Amud Aleph of the regular prints of your Mishna Beruras. And Shulchan Aruch writes, and this din again is brought over here in the Tur, and this specific one is mentioned in the Rishonim, in the Ritba, and Tosafot and others. Mikadeshin al Yayin Lavan. There's machloket whether or not white wine, not red wine, is kasher for kiddush or not. And here the Shulchan Aruch paskins that you can indeed say kiddush on yayin lavan, with, of course, the additional information. The Shulchan Aruch says that this is machloket. You have to recognize that Ramban, the Nachmanides, famously disagrees and says yayin lavan is pasul for kiddush. You can't say kiddush, you can't say arba kosot. All of these things, you should not be using white wine, only red wine. Ve'haramban poslo le kiddush afilu b'di'evid. Even if you did kiddush, you are not yotze. You have to say it again. Wine, according to Ramban has to be red. Aval mavdilin alav, but you could say havdalah on it, even according to the Ramban. Uminhag haolam kisvara rishona. Says the Shulchan Aruch, the minhag is like the first shita, that yain lavan is kasher for kiddush as well. Now says the Mishna Berura, Chafetz Chaim writes, according to everyone, even according to the first shita of the Ritban Tosafot, the mitzvah min hamuvchar is to look for yayin adom, to look for red wine. That would be according to everyone. Now, Chacham Ovadia writes in Chazon Ovadia in Pesach, at the last section when he talks about Kadesh Urchas, going to the Seder of the night, on Kadesh, the first one, he actually explains, also in brings it in Chod Kiddush in Chazon Ovadia of Shabbat Chelek Bet, that the Shulchan Aruch's de'ah, when he says minahag kesvara rishona, means that you could say Kiddush on yain lavan even lechatchila. He disagrees with this assertion of Chafetz Chaim, says machloket Chacham Ovadia and the Mishna Berura, whether or not yain lavan could be lechatchila ever. Ovadia says, yeah, it could be lechatchila, but the minhag of the Sfaradim nowadays is to say kiddush on yain adom. The Ben Ish Chai actually being concerned with this, he does talk about maybe mixing yain lavan with some grape juice, with some yain adom, but he also is concerned about the isur of svia b'mashkin, which generally speaking we are not concerned about coloring in food or in drinks, but the Ben Ish Chai is a little bit more concerned about when it comes to drinks, maybe coloring is an issue. So that's something that we have discussed in our Sunday morning Smicha program halacha of halachot of Sovea. But nevertheless, over here, the machloket is between the Mishna Berura and Chacham Ovadia, whether or not it could be lachatchila at all. And especially, says Chacham Ovadia, if the yain lavan is meshubach yoter, is a better quality wine, something you enjoy, something that is a high quality wine, then of course you're allowed to do that. Especially if it's not too white. So, for instance, if you have the rosés and so on that are pinkish, that are reddish, but light red, light pink, that is not adom midai. And says Chacham Ovadia, then if the quality is better than a regular red wine, you could even choose lachatchila to do a yain lavan when it's a better quality than your regular yain adom. Now, if you want on Shabbat to give to mix the wine, the red wine and white wine, in order to gain the shita of the Ramban over here, or you want to be machmir like the Mishna Berura, the Chatchila, according to everyone, should have yayin adom, so you want to make it adom, so to speak. So here you care about the color. So we mentioned that the Ben Ish Chai, and that's in Rav Pa'alim, in Chelek Gimel of his Tshuvot, in Siman Yud Aleph of Orach Chaim, he writes that's Asur, because even though that we don't have Tzviya Be'ochlim, like we learned in Shcharuch in our Smicha program, in Siman Shin Chaf of Orach Chaim, but by Mashkim, you have a Yisur Tzviya, and therefore if you want to add them together, you should put the Yayin Lavan into Adom. Right, because that is not halachically, is like a tata gavar. The bottom one is the dominant one, and therefore you don't look at it as you're coloring the white wine, but you're looking at it as you're discoloring the red one. So that would be mutar. So if you do want to do it like that, it's an easy fix. Pour the white wine inside the red, not the opposite, says the Ben Ish Chai Rav Pa'alim. But again, Chacham Obadiah in Yabia Omer in Chelek Bet Siman Chaf, and disagrees with that assertion of the Ben Ish Chai, and he holds that there's no Sviya Ba'ochalim, and so to the Mashkim, there's no Sviya B'Mashkim either. It will be therefore mutar to do either way that you want. But again, as we mentioned, this is something that is a machloket, and you could easily take care of it, especially because, for instance, Rav Moshe Levi, alav shalom, in his Sefer on Shabbat, in Menuchat Ahava, he writes that if your ikar of your kavanah is not the food or the taste, your ikar kavanah, your main purpose is the color, then you actually care about the color, then it should be asur. Like the Ben Ish Chai sides with this Ben Ish Chai in the Ashmatot of the second volume of his Menuchat Ahava, and therefore a person should be lachatchila careful. If you want to make yayin adom, pour the white wine into the red and not the opposite. So says the Mishna Berura, but you could say havdalah on it, say havdalah on white wine, because it's considered chamar medina. It's not any less than any chamar medina. You could say, if you don't have wine, you could say havdalah on beer, on any other drink that's considered chamar medina, which means it's a popular drink in the community. We'll get to the halachot of what is considered chamar medina in the upcoming halachot be'ezrat Hashem. But this is not going to be any less than beer of chamar medina. So therefore, says the Mishna Berura, as we will see in Siman Resh Sadivav, in the upcoming Simanim, in Seif Bet, the mafdilin alav imu chamar medina. You could say havdalah on it if it's considered chamar medina. V'uadin temitam ze mutar lekadesh alav b'shacharit lekula alma. You could say kiddush on it on shacharit of Shabbat as well, based on what we're going to see later on in this Siman Seif Tet, Emirtz Hashem. Now, Maran ends up saying, Aikar kisvara rishona, that the halacha is like the first svara, and Mishna Berura brings from Eliyahu Rabbah that yayin lavan that's mamash white, like the lightest, it's not pink, it's not yellow, it's mamash white, that nachon lachush l'dat Ramban. They should already be concerned about the Ramban's shita, that you should not be saying kiddush on that. Only if you mamash are stuck, you don't have any other red wine, that's when you could rely on that shita. Says Maran in the next Seif, in Seif Hey, yayin chai afilu im hem chazak the dari al chat telat maya. If you have wine that has not been diluted at all and it's very, very strong, says the Shulchan Aruch, if it's chazak so much that you could put on each measure of wine 3 measures of water, which is in the time of Chazal, that's how they had it, mikadeshin alav. You could still say kiddush on it, umikol makom yoter tov lemozgo. Even though that it is so strong, it is still kasher to say kiddush on it without being diluted. But lachatchila, you should dilute it a little bit to be proper wine. Ubilvat sheyeh mazug karaui, but it should be properly mixed, not too much. And we'll see what too much means. The Ramah writes, Yeinot shelanu, our wine, which is not as strong at all as the wines of the time of Chazal, it's much better not to dilute them. They're tovim mehem belo mizika. They're good without being diluted, and therefore you don't need to dilute the wines that we have nowadays. Now, the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siman Resh Dalet Seif Hey that, again, we did not do it recently, but again there the Shulchan Aruch discusses the yayin that we had in the generations past. They were very strong. If you put 3 measures water into 1 measure of wine, that would be still fine, right? It's going to be like the yayin mazuk, and you could say it's still berpriya gefen. But our wine, that is not chazak at all, you cannot say a bracha on that type of mixture. When you have majority water, you cannot say any bracha berpriya gefen on it. But our wine that's not chazak, it has to be dependent on the place that you live in, what is considered a normal wine. And the Mishna Berura writes over there, and also here in Shara Tziyun on the bottom, the Mishna Berura writes the same thing as there, that our generation is this Shulchan Aruch in Resh Dalet is only talking about the wine settlement, about the shmarim. Shmarim are not as strong. They're dried up. They have some soaked water, wine rather soaked up in them. But if you actually take wine and you mix it with water, you see from the Shulchan Aruch that you could still do this mixture as well. And not only that, the Ramah is mekel that 1/6 is already good enough. Now, I want to open a parenthesis over here. Chacham Ovadia, as we'll see right now, as far as the poskim, they are much more machmir of the 50+%, but the Ramah holds this 1/6, which is the source of many wine companies, at least in years past. Nowadays, things are becoming achshur dari, more and more. We're in a richer world, and there's more and more of the wine productions are 100% grape juice turned into wine, no mixture. But it used to be that you had many of the French wine and so on and so forth, that there were only 17% wine inside, and that was following this Ramah, because 1/6 will be 16+%, so 17 would really meet the minimum requirements, and that's how they did it. But the Kaf HaChaim over here in Od Lamed Aleph, Lamed Bet, Lamed Gimel, he says that the Shulchan Aruch and Ramah, they're disagreeing. They're not in agreement. Shulchan Aruch would never agree that you could do 1/6 and still be kasher, right? According to Ramah, so long as the taste of wine is felt, it has tam yayin, and you feel it strong and well, you could say berpriya gefen, right? So long as it's not less than 1/6. If you have less than 1/6 is batel. It's batel v'shesh. And therefore, even if you taste the wine, it's still shahakol. But according to Shulchan Aruch, we measure based on what the minhag is to mix, and therefore you have to be careful that the water at least should be a minimum of 50% wine. If you have anything less than that, says the Kaf HaChaim, even b'shat dachak, you cannot rely to dilute the wine more than that, and therefore it will become sha'akol, for instance, right? And that's what Chacham Ovadia held as well, right? So the story goes that by one of the chuppahs that he was Musta'ek Kiddushin, it was one of these wines that is like 16%, whatever, and he says sha'akol niya bidvaro, under the chuppah, he said shakol on the cup of wine that was presented to him. So again, that's something to be careful. And if there is additional sugar, the sugar is measured with the water, not with the wine. So you have to make all of those cheshbonot, prior to your usage to know what bracha to make, right? Now, Rabbi Tayyib, one of the Tunisian Gedolim, tremendous Gaon Vegadol B'Torah, in his Sefer Erech HaShulchan, over there in Siman Reshbet, he brings in the name of the Tashbetz, one of the Algerian Gedolei Rishonim, in Chelek Aleph, that anything that is mechze al mechze, anything that's considered half and half, 50-50, we go lechumra. When a goy touches it, we consider that wine, and we also don't say kiddush on it, and also we say shakol on it. All the chumrot we still take. So 50 is not sufficient. You have to have at least 51% wine for it to be considered wine. 50-50 is safek, so therefore we go after all the chumrot. On one hand, it will be ainesech if the goy touches it. On the other hand, you say shakol on it if you want to drink it. And Chacham Ovadia brings, in his young age, he wrote in Sheilot Utshuvot Chazon Obadiah, which is one of the most magnificent, fantastic works of art of Chacham Obadiah's Torah, both in Bikiyut and in depth of Lamdut and learning. He writes over there in Chelek Aleph, Siman Vav, that the Ikar is like the Erech HaShulchan. He sides with Gaon Rabbi Tayyib of Tunisia, that the Ikar is that 50-50 is Safek, and you need at least 51% to say Hagefen on it. He says the same thing in Chazon Obadiah, in Chod Brachot, that the biggest Chazon Obadiah, Halacha Sefer Chazon Obadiah, he says that as well, that you have to know for sure, can't even Safek is not good enough. You have to know for sure that more than 51% of this wine is wine, not water. Then you could say the bracha on it. Again, many sided with Chacham Ovadia, Rabbi Shalom Masas, Alav Shalom, the Moroccan chief rabbi who Harvadi actually brought him to Eretz Yisrael. He made him the chief rabbi there. They had a very, very close relationship. They had also a lot of arguments, very respectfully. But he also sides with Chacham Ovadia on this in the second volume of his Teshuvot. But be that as it may, that's the Shita of our Ovadia. Same is with Moshe Levi that we mentioned previously in Menuchat Ahava in Chelek Bet. He also says the same thing, and he adds also that if the taste of wine has been diminished by the water, then you don't say Borpira Gefen, even if you have majority wine, still don't say. So if you have one of these like low alcohol wines that are naturally low alcohol and they're 100% grape juice, they're 100% wine, there's no additional water, and you added more than 50%, less than 50% water, but it ruined the taste. If it ruined the taste, you don't say Borpira Gefen, you will say Shakol Niya Bidvaro. Now, how about if you are a Sfaradi that's invited to an Ashkenazi house or an Ashkenazi yeshiva, and the Kiddush is being said on a wine that, according to the Sfaradim, will be considered water. It's not wine, so that's pasul for Kiddush. You can't say Kiddush on that. So Rubo Mayim is more than 50% water. So says the again, this is, even though it's water and it's shakol, it's still not any less than Chamar Medina. Right? It still has alcohol content. It still has a good taste. People pay, 10 to up to hundreds of dollars of money for these bottles of wine. So they're considered Chamar Medina. It's not water. So therefore, if you are in that position in which you're not saying the bracha, but someone that for him it's considered a good wine is saying the bracha, but the Eved your Yotze is no need to go say your own kiddush afterwards, and you could be reliant on that kiddush. Now, this would work only for kiddush hayom, because kiddush hayom you could say on Chamar Medina, but the kiddush of Friday night you can't really say on Chamar Medina. You can't take a cup of beer and say kiddush of Friday night on. It's only for Havdalah and kiddush of the morning that it works. So therefore, we'll see this in upcoming Seifim, in Seif Tet. We're going to be discussing this at length, Bezrat Hashem. So therefore, if you get stuck with that type of setting for kiddush of Friday night, then you should perhaps have in mind that you should say the kiddush on pat if you don't have any other wine, but b'di'evet you're still yotze because you didn't say kiddush yourself. You heard kiddush from someone that was yotze, and the bracha of wine, it's not an essential part of the kiddush. For instance, if you came in Havdalah or kiddush and you didn't hear Priya Geffen well, you only heard the bracha of kiddush itself, then you're yotze, technically speaking. So now, because the mevarech, the person who's saying the kiddush, for him it's a legitimate wine that he's using, right? If he would ask you, you would say, yeah, for you is good. So when he's saying the bracha of kiddush, and then he says the bracha of kiddush, I heard the bracha of kiddush, the fact that I don't hold that this cup is Priya Geffen doesn't affect my fulfillment of the mitzvah of kiddush, which is with the second bracha, so long as it was on a cup that for him, for the mevarech, was a legitimate cup. So therefore, you don't necessarily have to go out of your way. Mikar adin, you're yotze, listening to kiddush for for a Sfaradi that listened to an Ashkenazi person who is reliant on the Ramah, rightfully so, that 1/6 is up to 1/6 is fine, and therefore, if he is yotze his kiddush, I could listen to him and be yotze with that as well. So that basically concludes Seif Hey of Shulchan Aruch over here, and we will continue in Mirz Hashem in the next Seifim in the days to come. Have a wonderful day.